Hello everybody, this is Hammer Striker here. Today I've got the latest from Savage, their re-entry into pistols, the Stance MC9. Please don't forget to check out our website. Go to our affiliates page. You'll find discount codes for things like Mantis Axe and Core belts. Link to that cool little bore light that we use for lighting up the barrels. Use those links. It will often save you money, never will cost you any additional money, and helps the channel. Thank you. Savage has been out of the pistol game for over 100 years, and they've decided to get back into the pistol game with this. And there's a lot of talk about this being based on the Honor Guard, which a company that went out of business, and I think that's true. But they have changed it up. They've made some changes. If you've seen pictures of the original Honor Guard, they've done some design and ergonomic changes. May or may not have made some functional changes. But overall, I do kind of think this is based on the Honor Guard. It doesn't have that protrusion that stuck out the front that kind of looked funky. The purpose of it was you could stick it up against an attacker and it wouldn't go out of battery. Kind of solving a problem that I don't really hear about happening. They did get rid of that feature, but overall I think it is probably at least closely based on that. One of the other things that I've heard is that it's a clone of the Shield, because the magazines look a lot like the Smith & Wesson Shield magazines. I don't believe that's true. The magazines, may have been copied, but the internal design is completely different. I took apart a Shield, took apart this, and they're completely different. So as far as this being a knockoff of the Shield, I don't think that's actually the case. So talking about just the specs on it, it does weigh 22 ounces. It's a little bit on the heavier side for a small pistol like this, but it's not ridiculous. It's 6.2 inches front to back, 4.6 inches tall. The 7-round magazine fits nice and flush. It does come with an 8-round magazine that's a little bit longer. And there is a version of this that comes with a 10-round magazine, but I haven't seen where you can actually buy the 10-round magazine separately. So at the moment it appears you either get the one that comes with the 2 magazines, the 7 and the 8, or you get the one that comes with the 10, but I'm not aware of being able, at least at the moment, to buy the 10-round magazine to put in this. One of the things that it does have that's nice is it's 0.96 inches thick, so it's a bit on the thin side. It has really, really nice 3-dot sights, easy to see, and they're Glock 43 pattern sights, so if you don't like the sights, you can easily change them out, and of course there's a wide diversity of sights available for the Glock 43. This gun has got some goods and it's got some bads. So it's got a lot of nice things. There's a lot of things that would make this attractive. The barrel is stainless steel. The slide is very well machined. It's got serrations at the front and the rear. It's got compensation ports, but the barrel itself is not ported. But if you were to either have the barrel ported, or if they ever came out with a version with a ported barrel, you'd be able to run it. So right now these are more decoration, but it does kind of look nice. And it has some ambi features. So the slide stop slide release is here, and it's there. One thing that I did find though is neither of them really work well as a slide release. Once I used it a few times, it did kind of loosen up, and at the range I was able to thumb it down. But it's very, very stiff. It works well as a slide stop. It did lock open when it was supposed to, and didn't lock open when it wasn't supposed to. But it's very difficult to use it to release the slide. May work out over time. Another feature that's ambi that also didn't really work as well as I would have liked is the magazine release, both sides. What I found is it's very difficult to operate this side. You really have to push it, hard. And you can do it with one hand, but by the time you've pushed it that hard, often you've wrapped your hand around the mag so it doesn't seem to want to come out. I did find that it worked better on this side, and maybe that's because I'm using a finger hitting straight in rather than a thumb from the side. But the nice feature is that it's ambi. The not so nice feature is that it really didn't work all that well. It was difficult to release a mag, and if you're in the heat of the moment, you're probably going to find it difficult to do. But having the ambi feature is a little bit on the nice side. So take the mag out. With it sitting on the table like this, you can see that it has a very sandpapery texture. And a lot of times you'll hear me say, it looks like sandpaper, but it doesn't feel like sandpaper. This looks like sandpaper, and it feels like sandpaper. It's very, very kind of abrasive and grippy. It does stay in your hand. It stays in your hand very well. And I didn't find any issues with it at the range being bothersome. But I do think this is one that if you had it in a holster, you're going to want to make sure the holster covers all of this, because this isn't something you're going to want rubbing up against you. It does have replaceable back straps, so that you can replace the back strap with this curved one that's on it, kind of got a hump on it, and one that's a little bit on the flat side. And at the muzzle end, it does appear to be quite well done. There's some videos I saw where these look to be off-centered, and this one appears to be well done and well balanced. The quality control on this does seem to be fairly high. Other than some of the things that don't function well, I think it's more of a design issue than necessarily a quality control issue. It worked well at the range. It was easy to shoot well. It was easy to stay on target. The trigger worked well at the range. But let's talk about the trigger, because the trigger on this is kind of billed as being a great trigger, and it's not. It's not a bad trigger, but it's not a great trigger. So there's almost no take-up. Kind of a nice feature. Kind of a long, kind of stuttery break, and then you're at the back, and there is an over-travel stop. Reset's kind of stuttery. As I'm letting it out, the force that it's putting against my finger is changing. There it goes. It finally resets. And you're right back on the wall, but it's also all the way out. You see, I take my finger off it, nothing changes. And then that kind of stuttery, a little bit creepy break, it gets a little heavier at the end. So it's not an awesome trigger by any stretch. It's not a hideous trigger. I've seen worse triggers on these really small guns, but these days there's a lot that have better triggers. I will say at the range, I didn't notice this. So the trigger kind of just did its job at the range. I was able to shoot it well. And I really didn't notice some of the things that I'm noticing here on the bench. But overall, I would not call this a great trigger by any stretch of the imagination. Some of the things that they've done are things that you would expect on a higher price gun, and then some of the things like this you might expect on a lower price gun. So let's talk about that for a second. It has an MSRP that goes between $479 and $561. So $479 for the one like you see here, where it's just the basic model. And then it goes up a little bit for one with night sights, and then there's a version with a laser, trigger guard laser on it right from the factory. And that takes it up to the higher end. At that price point, I would have expected more. I would have expected more capacity. All the guns these days are the kind of those micro high capacities, and they're at least 10 rounds. I would have expected the mag release to work well and things like that. I ended up finding this for around $350. At that price point, it's actually competitive with a few of the others, and some of these things are kind of more what you would expect in that price range. I think they're having a hard time selling these at full price because of some of these characteristics. Is it a bad gun? No. Is it a great gun? No. It's kind of in the middle, kind of average gun, and it does the job well, but I think there's other choices out there that kind of surpass this. So I think what they did is they took a design that has not aged well and prettied it up. So of course you're going to want to see the internals. That part is actually pretty good for getting it apart. Lock it back, flip the lever down, and it comes right apart. Notice I didn't pull the trigger. Kind of a complicated, lots going on fire control group, but this is a chassis. This is also stainless steel. So there's, back on the quality side, they did some things right. This chassis could be pulled out and put into other grip frames. I've heard rumor that there'll be a grip frame with a rail, which this one doesn't include, but I've seen no evidence of that. I think it'll all depend on whether it ends up selling well and being popular. But there's one of the things they did kind of well. It's got this really weird recoil spring assembly. Kind of a double recoil spring, and you're used to seeing these, but when you see them, you're also used to seeing them be captive, and this one's not. That's not a super big deal, but it does kind of make it very cumbersome to put back together, because when you put the spring in, it's got a lot of travel before the rod kicks in, so you get into that alignment fun, and you got this kind of weird setup here at the back. And I know why they did this. If they made it round, it would have interfered with the width of the gun. And this does work, but you do need to now make sure this is centered. So there's going to be two steps of fun putting this together. First is getting the guide rod in, and then getting this centered enough that you can put the gun back together. So it's going to be one of those you may or may not get it back together correctly on the first try every time. Pretty well done barrel, and as I mentioned earlier, it's stainless steel. Nice feed ramp. It's kind of a machine polished. It's not a mirror finish, even though the lights are reflecting well off of it, but you can see there's some texture, so there's some tooling marks. But this fed everything we gave it, and it worked well. It does appear to have really good quality machining. It's conventional rifling, but it's nice and sharp and square and well done. This outer look kind of makes it look like it's a sleeved barrel, and I'd kind of heard that it was, but then other pieces of it that I look kind of make it look like a one piece. So I'm not sure if this is a sleeved barrel or not, but the muzzle end kind of gives you the impression that it might be, where you get an outer sleeve and then a pressed in inner sleeve that's the actual barrel, as opposed to the typical hammer forge that most companies are doing now. I don't know the answer on that, but it's kind of a possibility that it is just a sleeve. When I look at the slide, which is not stainless steel, but it's melanite treated, it's well machined. It's clean, it's well done. You do have a drop safety toggle here. It's kind of a rocker switch instead of a piston. Unfortunately, though, it does not include the inertial toggle on the trigger. So dropped in the right direction, it could defeat the drop safety by having the momentum pull the trigger. It also has the option of a thumb safety version. The thumb safety would sit back here. And if you bought the version with the thumb safety, it would be ambi thumb safety. Overall, what they've done from a manufacturing perspective appears to be well done in quality. I think most of the deficiencies in this gun are actually in the design. And part of it is, as I mentioned before, it's a design that hasn't aged all that well. As I go to put this in, I'm probably going to end up covering a review of it, but I'll show you just the initial. As I push on this, of course, the spring's going to bend, and I got to rock this into place and get the guide rod to pop out through there. So it's a bit kind of messy to do, and you want to make sure that nobody's at the business end of it in case it slips out of your hand and parts go flying. So I'm not going to be able to do this. There it goes. I finally got it. Well, almost. There it goes. That part's clumsy. So when you hear about captive guide rod and why is that important, that's why. If this were a captive guide rod like a Glock and the XDM and a number of those others, it would just pop right in and drop in. And now you need to make sure that you get this rotated the right way, because you see if it's rotated wrong, it won't go together. So you need to have it rotated correctly and in the proper position, like that. Now I'm going to put it back together. A 50% chance it'll actually go back together on the first try. Sometimes you got to play with it a little bit, kind of rock it around. I may have to recenter it. Make sure it's in there. There it goes. So disassembly, super easy. Reassembly, kind of clunky. Is it horrible? No, I've had to deal with worse. But in most of the modern ones, the Shield, the Glocks, all of the other modern guns, they're all captive guide rods, and they don't have some of that clunkiness. So they just kind of pop together, slide together, and go. If you're trying to take this apart in the field to clear a break or a jam or something like that, and you pull the recoil spring up, you're probably out of the game if you're in the field. If you're at a bench and you'll just finish cleaning it, you may say a word or two that is less polite, but you'll get it back together and you'll get it working. And once it does go back together, it works well and functions like it's supposed to. So the last thing I'll kind of show you is with the flush mag in, you're looking at a 2-finger grip, just the edge of your pinky, or at least the size of my hand, and your pinky's going to be down hanging, whether you do the teacup thing or wrap it around. If you put the 8-round mag in that comes with it, you've got barely a 3-finger grip, enough to call it a 3-finger grip. And the 10-round mag, if you had the 10-round mag version, it's a little bit longer. From a style perspective, you're seeing the gray and black one. So the slides are black on all of them, but you have a gray frame, there's a flat dark earth frame, and then there's a black frame. And with the chassis system design, it's potential to come up with all kinds of other different grip frames. So they've got, again, kind of some cool features, but there's a few misses on this. So let's take it to the summary. Do I recommend this gun? Well, it functioned flawlessly. So from a reliability perspective, I can't say anything bad about it. But what I would say is at the MSRP, if that's what you end up paying for it, the $479 and up, there's a lot of better guns in that same price range. More capacity, mag releases and slide stop, slide release work well, etc., etc. So at MSRP, I wouldn't recommend it. If you're finding it down in the low threes, then some of the behavior of this is actually better than a lot of the guns that are currently available in that price point. So this is definitely one that if you see it less expensive, okay, maybe. Full price, no. There's a lot of other things that are just going to do a better job overall. Beyond that, if you like our videos, please give us a thumbs up, share, subscribe, click that bell up there to be notified if you do. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Patreon, Twitter, Getter, and we're on Rumble. Thank you.